Monsieur Anber.
I'm very, very excited tonight, Monsieur Cassavant. I'm very, very excited tonight. How are you? How are you? How are you? How are you?
I'm doing very well, actually. So if you're this excited, I'm guessing it's for something other than we have right-handed mugs. Maybe that was the news. So
No.
maybe like the show gave the left-handed. That's going to be for something going forward here. But for tonight, I believe you're excited about the guests we're about to have on this evening.
Yes,
We're going to do something different here.
Yeah, two of my dearest friends in boxing, and I'm glad they could be here. I'm very excited about this.
We're going to introduce them here in a few seconds. Just to be clear, it's Iceman, John Scully, who's been on the program before. And we're also going to be joined momentarily by Buddy McGirt, who had the privilege of being at his induction into the Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York, a few summers ago. And I believe you had many stories of Buddy McGirt over the years, Russ.
Indeed. You got to let Buddy share them with you, but absolutely. So I'm very happy that they took the time to be with us. Boys!
Hello.
Look at them. Look at what a fine crew. What a fine crew this is. This is great. You know what? It's a shame we're going to do this podcast because it's a special podcast commemorating a special event in history. But it's a shame that our phone calls aren't recorded and broadcast because we've had some good calls.
Yeah. I was thinking, as we were talking last time, I was thinking this should be recorded. Like this should have definitely been recorded. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look how excited Buddy looks about being here.
No, man, it's just, in 1991, I was at the 20-year anniversary dinner in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And that was the first time I met Muhammad Ali.
Oh, so Buddy's already getting into the stories here, which is the Ali Frazier anniversary. Which
we can talk about it later. We can talk about Canelo.
Obviously, a lot of people were excited to talk about that because we're going to have your perspective. You're some of the best boxing minds in the game. But before we get to that, and this is the Calling Russ Anber edition podcast, we talked last week about Canelo's big fight, the pound-for-pound best fighter, and something that the pound-for-pound fighters used to do in Buddy's time and even in Ice's time. They used to fight a lot, be active. Canelo decides to do that in defending his belt in the mandatory against Yildirim, but a third-round knockout by Canelo that was a one-sided performance. Russ, I'm interested, though. You said something to me before we went on air about the fact you thought Yildirim had the right style, but wrong approach. I don't know if you gentlemen agree with that.
Well, let me. First of all, there's two things that bothered me about. Well, one thing that bothered me about the fight, but I still do think it's the right style. Maybe Buddy will disagree, but someone asked me just before the fight started, what do I think of Yildirim? I said, look, Canelo's a great fighter, and I think it's fair to say, we got to give credit where credit is due. I mean, he may be one of the most, if not the most complete fighter in the game today. He can do it. He can do everything, right? Inside, outside, tall guys, big guys, short guys, whatever it is. He pretty much has a mastery of the art of boxing. I think that's fair to say. But I said, Yildirim is going to give it everything he's got. This guy's a gutsy kid. He's going to try till the very end. He will really try. And I was a little disappointed that I didn't get that effort from him. However, like I told you when he fought Callum Smith, when Liam Smith fought him and Yildirim started to do the same thing, I said, oh, this could be interesting. You have to be able to take it to Canelo. Unless you're a Floyd Mayweather who outboxes him, if you're going to try to backpedal and stay away from him and not do anything to force him to work, I think he's got you. But if you take it to him and put the pressure on him and make him fight and fight back with him, I think that's the way you're going to beat him. Buddy, I'll ask you first, yes or no?
Yes, I mean, you got the right idea. I think you got to do a little bit of both to break his rhythm. I mean, because if you just do one thing, he's going to eventually figure you out. So
right.
I think you got to mix it up, take it to him. I mean, when he fought Mayweather came out early, got his respect, and then boxed the hell out of him after that. And then by the time he figured it out, the fight was over.
Right. Scully?
I mean, I agree. I mean, you have to agree. I mean, the guy's a great fighter. He's figuring out all these styles, and even moving up to light heavyweight. So many people are discounting they act like Kovalev was like nobody. And I mean, he's not what he was, but I mean, that's still a big jump for a former, basically a welterweight, to move up and fight Kovalev and like take him out viciously. But I did think early on, as I recall, Kovalev had some success with the jab, and I thought he did some good stuff early on, but he just, he fell apart. But as far as well-rounded, I mean, Canelo, you can't hate on him at all. The guy can do it all. I think a lot of Mayweather fans hate on Canelo. They don't want to see an heir to the throne, so to speak. But Canelo's good. I mean, he's actually, to me, in the last couple of years, a year and a half, he's getting better. He's definitely better than he was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And I think the big thing as well is, and the proof was in this fight with Yildirim, it really doesn't matter who he's fighting. He has proven to be, and there haven't been a ton of fighters like this throughout history, but he is a bona fide ticket seller. He sells tickets. It doesn't matter who he's fighting. People want to come and see him fight.
Yeah.
What about the criticism that he fought Yildirim and defended his mandatory? Isn't something about being active, and now he has a plan to fight Billy Joe Saunders in May? Maybe that's the toughest fight for him out there. There's also plans of him maybe trying to unify against Caleb Plant. But I was reading something before we did this here, I started recording, and Buddy McGirt in 1994, when we talk about different eras and fighters being active, you fought 5 times. You had over 60 pro bouts, even in some of those fights were against Pernell Whitaker, Pat Coleman, so big names. And I don't know. I think there's something to be said about Canelo being active despite who the opponent is. I don't know what you gentlemen think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the guys, people, it's amazing how people will always find something to complain about. Like, it's amazing. Like, this guy, he's everything. You have a guy who's a great champion. He's fighting often. He's fighting solid competition. I mean, he can do it all. And people have a way to complain about this guy. It's unbelievable. You should be happy that there is a guy like this with that type of skill. And the fact is, I mean, when he fought Triple G, a lot of people thought he was going to get murdered in that fight. I know a lot of people thought he was going to lose. And even at the weigh-in, he looked so small next to Triple G. And and he won clearly at least one of the times. So I mean, I don't hate on Canelo at all. I never down him because I like what he's doing.
Buddy,
I think that I'm gonna give you an example. Then you maybe gonna understand. When Ray Robinson lost to Jake LaMotta, and they fought 3 weeks later, in between those fights, he fought a guy named, I think, something Wilson.
correct.
No one ever heard of, but he kept sharpening his tools. These guys today, I don't know what the hell they be thinking. I mean, I had a guy say, buddy, I need an 8-week camp. I said, 8 weeks? I said, if it takes you 8 weeks to get in shape, me and you both are in the wrong business. You know what I mean?
You're not in shape, are you? If it takes you 8 weeks to get in shape, you're not in shape, right?
All right.
So it's crazy. So, I mean, I agree. Okay, no one knew the guy Canelo fought, but he's staying active, man. And that's what boxing needs. Guys like that. These guys today, man, they fight once every 6 months.
And to that point, that's why I think the win for Canelo is important to continue and fight fans. Like Scully says, they'll find no reason to complain either way, but he got it done. And then just maybe to close this topic here for future fights, do you think Billy Joe Saunders does present the toughest challenge for Canelo yet? Or do you think there's other guys out there? And Scully, I'm thinking maybe one guy, one division up, but I don't know what you guys think about Saunders now having his shot against Canelo.
I mean, me personally, I think if Saunders is really on his game, I think he creates a lot of problems style-wise. I think, if he's confident, if he comes in with some confidence, I think he's good. He's very good. He showed me a lot, like when he beat David Lemieux. That being said, I'm not ready to put any money against Canelo at this point. But I do think a confident Billy Joe creates some problems. Yeah.
Buddy,
I agree. I mean, but when you fight a guy like Canelo, it's like fighting a guy like Mayweather or Roy Jones when Roy Jones was younger. You got to stay focused, not for 12 rounds. You got to stay focused for like 2 hours, because the first time you lose focus for like a split second, they got you. I mean, and the key is, can anybody go in there and stay focused for that long and just stay with a fight plan and not lose focus? Because once you lose focus with a guy like Canelo, it's a wrap. I mean, look, when Roy fought Montel Griffin the first time, Montel was doing fantastic. But he got lax for that one split second, and that was it. I mean, even though Roy got disqualified, but then if he didn't get disqualified, next round he would have got him out of there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that says a lot about Canelo, but it also says, does it say something about the depth of the division as well, where in December he beats Callum Smith, who everybody kind of considered the best super middleweight in the world. Like, he was the guy. He had the other belts. He's the guy. He's undefeated, young, tall, good puncher, blasting guys out of there. Gets him out of there, beats Callum. I was in the corner for that one. Beats him, and then turns around and faces the number one contender, the supposed number one contender, WBC, and it's not even a match. So I think depth has something to do with this division as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, but he's fighting, like they say, he's fighting who they put in front of him.
That's
but
right.
He's busy. I mean, you don't see that, and Buddy had, I don't know, 76 fights or 80 fights or something. And, you have Buddy and you have James Toney, who had a million fights and was fighting 10-round non-title fights, a lot of them. And he was fighting like Ricky Thomas, and he's fighting guys who could box and who were decent. Danny Garcia. We don't see that. So again, Canelo, it's just like with Mayweather. No matter what he does, there are going to be people in this world, in this crazy, sick boxing world, that are going to criticize Canelo no matter what he does. If he came back, and it would probably be true to a degree, but I mean, if Mayweather came back and Canelo annihilated, like murdered him, he would get no credit, which I wouldn't give him full credit anyway, but it's just to say that anything he does, he's going to get down for. I mean, like I say before, as a little guy, he was small compared to Triple G. So going against Kovalev, who I met one time right before he fought John Pascal, and I was surprised at how big Kovalev was. He struck me as he was a lot bigger than me, and I probably outweighed him by 15 or 20 pounds at the time. And and Canelo went in there and knocked him out, like broke him down scientifically, and overcame some rough spots and knocked him out. So I'm not one of those guys. I don't have anything bad to say about Canelo at this point.
All right. Well, that's I think that says it all with how good this guy is. And I think, having him fight and having the stars of boxing performing is what the sport needs. I don't think the sport needs for guys to be sitting at home and not fighting, and so he's doing that. And the people and the people are paying. The people are buying the DAZN subscription. They're paying to watch him fight. They're buying the tickets to watch him fight. They would buy more tickets if we weren't in this COVID situation. They would have sold even more tickets. How can you knock a guy for delivering on that? So,
we'll look forward to seeing the Saunders fight, if he does have a unification fight to try to get all titles, which is rare. We see credit to him, and hopefully that happens. We're going to get to the main topic of why I think we have the historians on the program, which is the Ali Frazier 1 anniversary. But before I get to that, believe it or not, gentlemen, we have a sponsor, but it's not food related. In the case for Rusty, I think it's unfortunately not food related, but it is Canada's newest online sports book and casino, Bet99. If you missed out on Canelo's prediction or your bet last week, you get a chance to redeem yourself with some boxing this weekend, as well as some big MMA fights if you're into that. Be sure to check out their player props, bet builder, the risk-free live bet bonuses. Use the code, I should say, boxing99, and they'll match up to $600 worth of your wager. All right. I don't know what the odds were exactly when Ali and Frazier fought. Maybe Russ will know. We're approaching the 50-year anniversary. And when Russ was thinking about who to get on the program, he says, we got to get Ice. We got to get Buddy if we talk about that fight. And I was watching it not that long ago. And to me, it's the best fight of the three, even though we can maybe get to that argument. But first and foremost, Russ, maybe set the stage as to how much this fight means for the history of the sport.
Well, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I know that was the fight that introduced me to boxing. Why? Not because it transcended sport. it set the stage for what would become, in my opinion, the most important sporting event maybe in North American history, maybe the world, but certainly at least in North America, sociopolitically, with everything that went on, with Ali being out of the ring for his stance against the war in Vietnam, in which that represented millions of people who felt the same way about the war. Him coming back, Frazier, being thrust into the role of the establishment champion. He was the establishment champion. He wasn't the renegade like Ali was, who was standing up with the same people that were protesting the war. This meant a lot. This went beyond the sports pages of its importance as a fight. And it was also a time when purses went out of this world at what they were fighting for. And two great champions meeting head to head, technically in their prime, albeit Ali had 3.5 years taken away. He was still only 29 years old. He wasn't like he was old then. And meeting, I don't know that there's a time in history when two great champions, both undefeated, met head to head in the heavyweight division. Usually it's been like a chain reaction. The great champion ages and the next one comes along. But two guys who met, I don't know when that's happened before. So that's the stage that I'm setting for how it affected me and the kids on the block, how we talked about that fight. And it wasn't because we were boxing fans. It's because it became bigger than just a boxing match.
Right. I remember reading, this is how big it was. I remember reading that they called a truce in Vietnam.
That's right.
Think about what I'm saying. They called it, it's almost like a comedy sketch, like on Saturday Night Live, where they said, hey, you guys stop fighting and we'll stop fighting. Let's watch the fight. And that's really what happened. They called the truce so they could watch Ali Frazier. Now, there's no fight today that the Vietnam War, people tried to tell me adamantly that Pacquiao and Mayweather was a bigger fight. I'm saying, listen, a year from that fight after, no one is ever going to watch that fight on tape. And I said that before the fight. They're never going to watch a tape of it. You're never in 20 years, maybe out of nostalgia, but you're never going to go, hey, let's watch that Pacquiao Mayweather fight again. Nobody's going to do that. But you'll watch Ali and Frazier, and you'll watch the pre-fight over and over for the next 200 years or whatever it is, however long people are able to watch. So I mean, that fight is humongous. They're not stopping a war for any other fight that I can see.
Not at all.
Now, buddy, Scully thought, like I said, that you were ringside for that fight because he thought you were 68 and thought you were...
No, you know what happened? No. I had a ringside ticket and I left. I had to give it to one of the pimps.
But no, I said Mark was there. Mark was at the fight. Breland was at the fight as a young kid. And
I was
we were
7
talking
years
about...
old. I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember the best thing I remember being 7 besides that fight was my mom coming to the school, beat my ass in class in front of everybody.
Should have put that on the undercard.
Yeah, I would have taken the fight.
But that fight, man, was, you and Russ, John, you guys said it all. To put a war on hold.
Right.
For a fight between two men who, against, you got one man who refused to go to war. You know what I mean? And against those two men, it's just unbelievable, man. You can't, words you can't explain it. My mom at the time was going for Joe Frazier. And so when the picture in the Daily News had Joe Ali get knocked down, my mother taped it up in the dining room in our house because everybody else was going for Ali. And then the funny part is, years later, for the 20-year anniversary, that was the first time I met Ali. And I was it was in Philadelphia, and I was standing there, me, I'm always running my mouth. And the doors open behind me, and it was a bright light. And I turned around, and Ali was standing right there. And I don't get starstruck, but I was like, holy shit. And then when I went to shake his hand, bodyguard said no. Ali says, no, let him shake my hand.
Yeah.
And I said, Muhammad, I said, we have the same birthday. He said, you're a bad man.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, I wound up becoming friends with Joe Frazier later on. And, just great men. Never been another one like, and you're right. That Pacquiao Mayweather fight, I walked out in the 7th round. I was there.
Yeah.
I walked out.
Well,
Right.
that's the
I went
thing,
to
right? That's so
Fatburger.
impressive is that the Pacquiao Mayweather hype and all of the Mayweather events, they had the hype, but they rarely matched it inside the ring for the action. This Frazier Ali fight was kind of like the first ever, if you will, massive pay-per-view event that also generated such a memorable fight between two undefeated guys. I think that's why you have the recipe where completely different to what you see nowadays to match that hype and performance. I don't know, Russ, if you agree with that or not.
well, look, I'm gonna echo what Buddy said first before I get to that. And only people who have ever met Ali can understand what I'm about to say. You guys might remember a gentleman. He just got inducted, although last year or 2 years ago, Guy Jutra, referee from Canada, got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Guy's been around, forever. Met these guys. And he said to me, and I said, yes, that's exactly right. And I'm not meaning to be blasphemous when I say this, but he said meeting Ali, when you're there with him, physical, it's like being in the presence of God. It's like being in the presence of a superior being. I don't know how, and if you tell somebody that, they don't know. But you guys, when you met him, just like what you said, right, buddy? It's like supernatural.
Right. Let me say one thing. What you said, I read that in a book about Ali about 20 years ago. I think it might have been Thomas Hauser's book. And either he said it or somebody was quoted as saying, like, they said, when you meet Ali, it's different. It's just different. Like, you feel like there's a glow around this guy. There's a feeling. And I'll tell you what, the second time I met him, the first time I was young, so, there was a glow around anyone famous, you know what I mean? But the second time I was an adult, and when I saw him, and I only saw him, I didn't get close to him that particular day, I said, man, there's something like, it's like a magnet, like if they had a way to measure it with a machine or something, there was like a magnetic field and everybody could feel it. And it was almost like nobody wanted to leave the area, even though he was just sitting there. Like, you couldn't even talk to him or anything, but it's like, I didn't want to leave this guy. I didn't want to leave the scene because I wouldn't feel as good outside as I do right now inside.
You're right. You're right. It's crazy, man. And I became friends with Joe Frazier. Like, he would come to my house, you know what I mean? And it's funny, like, Joe, he came to my house once and he says, all right, buddy, I want to go out. I said, where you want to go? So I'm thinking he wants to go to like a fancy place, fancy neighborhood. He said, take me to the hood. He said, I don't want to go to no fancy nightclubs. Take me to a hood, to a club. So I took him to a club in Amityville, right? Like, everybody's like, you taking Joe Frazier where? I'm like, that's where he wants to go. I mean, what you want me to do? You know what I mean? That's where he wants to go. And then we get to the club and his nephew is the DJ.
And you didn't know?
No. I didn't, listen, I lived in Long Island my whole life. I didn't go to that damn club. I'm like, I'm not. And he said, McGirt, I said, there's one in Amityville. He goes, let's go. I'm like, smoke. Let me explain something to you, man. You need a bulletproof vest to get in that place. He said, McGirt, let's go there. So we went. We went and we got in, and I told Bounce, I said, look, man, I got Joe Frazier. He's like, man, stop playing, buddy. So I got Joe Frazier wants to come in. And we get in, and the DJ's his nephew, and he told the DJ to put on James Brown, and look out. Joe Frazier did his thing, man.
Do you guys?
You know what I mean? And he always called Ali the butterfly. He would never say Ali. He goes, yeah, when I fought the butterfly, he would never say his name. He would always call him the butterfly. But to be honest, we never talked about it. But being around those great men, like you said, John, it's like, you can't explain it, man. It's right. You know what I mean? You can't explain it. And there'll never be, I don't care how great a fighters come along. Those two, what they brought to the sport, to me, was phenomenal. I mean, just, these guys fought, okay, everyone fights for the money, but they was fighting for their pride as men. You know what I mean? They put it all on the line, and I didn't see the second fight, but the first fight and the third fight, they put it all on the line. They was prepared to die. You don't get that today.
Hey, the second fight was a good fight as well.
I didn't see it. I didn't see the
fight,
second fight. You know what I mean? But
it's a
the
good
third one,
fight.
the third one, I tell every young kid that said they want to box, I says, listen, go home and get the Thriller in Manila and watch it. Not for the skill, but for the will and determination that two men showed that night. And then let me know if you want to be a fighter. Because there might come a time you're in a fight like that. Just think, you know, I mean, we all hear stories where Ali was ready to quit. Just that Eddie Futz got the referee before Angelo Dundee.
Right.
I mean, what do you think would have happened if Frazier would have won? How do you think it would have changed? Scully, how do you think it would have changed if
I hate to think about it. I mean, it would have been, they would have had to fight again. You know, they would have fought again.
I don't think they had nothing left. They had nothing left after that,
But I mean, if Joe wanted to defend the title, you know, and Ali was, you know, because I think Ali was still bigger. You know, what I've read, and a lot of people, I guess you might know this, like they say going into the third fight, it wasn't expected to be a good fight. People thought Ali was going to beat Joe easy because Joe had, you know, he got knocked out by Foreman. And I remember reading, they said the vibe was that Ali was going to beat him. They didn't expect that tough of a fight. They didn't think it was going to be that great.
What a fight, man. I know you've seen it. I've seen it 100 times.
When you factor in the heat, you know, you put that pace and then you put the heat. And I know I've been in tough fights, nothing like that, but I've been in tough fights where it's crossed my mind like, you know, it's not worth it, man. I got 6 more rounds of this to go. You know, now you imagine those guys at that age, you know, that heat, the fierceness of that fight, you can imagine that, not that they would quit, but, and fighters say they wouldn't quit, and most fighters wouldn't, I think, but everybody thinks about quitting. I've thought about, I would never quit in a fight. I've never quit in a fight in my life. Never, not in sparring, not in the gym, nothing. I've thought about it 100 times. It's crossed my mind. I've sat down on the stool and said, I'm not getting up. That's it. I'm not getting up. And then when the bell rings, you get up, right? These guys in 100+ degree heat, they're older. You know, Frazier's putting the shots on the body with Ali. Ali's tired. 15, you know, you got 15 rounds to go. You know, as a man, as a boxing, as me, John Scully, I would have been surprised if Ali quit. But as a boxer, I couldn't hate him for it, knowing what it must have. I can't imagine. I mean, I can only imagine. I can just kind of imagine what it must have been like. And I'm sure, you know, war, physical man-to-man war comes to mind. Like it was that kind of fight.
15 rounds. When I won my first title, it was a 15-round fight. And Frankie Warren was in my ass. He was on me like a cheap suit. And I went back to the corner and I sat down and I said to myself, I should have went to college. But then after the 5th round, I didn't look up anymore because I knew I had 10 more rounds. Just knowing, okay, for 5 rounds, just 5 rounds, I had a feeling knocked out. This motherfucker hurt me a couple of times, and I still got 10 more rounds of this shit. So I went into a zone. I didn't, you know what I mean? And Jim Brown had said something to me one day. He goes, buddy, you ever go into a zone and it takes you a while to come down? I says, yeah. He goes, okay, imagine being in my shoes. I'm playing a football game. I'm in the zone. After the game, they want me to cut it off and then cut it back on Monday. Yeah. And then I started thinking, I was like, you know, after I won the title, for like 2-3 hours after the fight, everyone was like, yo, buddy, you was in the daze. I was in that damn zone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I can imagine with those two, man, and I didn't fight in the heat like that. I can only imagine how the hell they felt, man, around round 7.
Right,
because the first 6 rounds, Joe was getting smoked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then he stepped on the gas, man. But I just think that both of them had pride that you'll never find a no fighter today. I don't give a shit what nobody says.
Yeah.
What about the notion that Russ believes the first fight was actually a better fight? You guys seem to think the Thriller was the best fight of the three.
I think not, but see, for different reasons though.
Yeah.
For different reasons. Because like Scully said, they both were past their prime. Ali was thought to roll over Joe. You know what I mean? But Joe had a trick for his ass. You know what I mean? But nothing would ever be like the first fight. Just the magnitude of the first fight was, you figure every pimp, every drug dealer, everybody came to the, and that's how they busted, what's his name, man? Frank Lucas.
Frank Lucas.
That's how he got busted. He was sitting in front of the mob. The mob like, hold up, man, who's this motherfucker?
Well, and you know what? If I remember correctly, they said he had the
Chinchilla
fur coat. I think the chinchilla, and they're saying, how is this guy affording that coat? And that's what drew the attention to him. That's what got him in trouble.
Man, that fight, man. But there'll never be a fight of that magnitude. I mean, Mayweather Pacquiao was a lot of hype, I will say, and I was in Vegas, and Vegas was, I can't even explain how Vegas was. But by round six, people were walking out.
Yeah, it didn't have the
you know, it's amazing about the Mayweather Pacquiao fight. Now, I'm sure we all got like questions from reporters in the months before the fight. And everybody's talking about Mayweather Pacquiao, everybody. And I said to 10 different writers and reporters, I said, I don't see what the fuss is about. Mayweather's going to beat this guy easy, and it's not going to be exciting at all. I said, do you really think Floyd Mayweather is going to turn into, Hagler Hearns here to please you? He's done this his whole life. That's why he is Floyd Mayweather, because he's very smart. He's not getting into a war with Pacquiao. This is going to be a boring fight. That was easy to see.
Yeah, but Ice, would you have said the same thing?
You didn't call me and tell me.
I told everybody I could. I said, don't pay $100 to watch this fight, because you're not getting $100 worth of entertainment. Period.
Yeah, but Ice, would you have thought the same thing in 2010 if Pacquiao, the Pacquiao that had just defeated a guy like Miguel Cotto?
Yes, Mayweather is Mayweather. He wins every fight the same. Like, look, people don't like Floyd and that type of thing, and they say he's boring, which I don't necessarily think so. But he's never shown me anything to give any indication that Pacquiao was going to beat him. I mean, he's beaten these guys playing with these guys. Like it's kind of like Roy Jones when he was in his prime, where you see him fight a guy and you go, the guy wasn't that good. You're like, what are you talking about? The guy was 35-0. He's a two-time world champion. But Roy made them look regular. Floyd made a lot of guys, when he decided to turn on the jets, he outclassed these guys. And me personally, I never saw any bit of hype. And not only, when the fight happened, this is the only fight, super fight, mega fight that's happened where one of the guys was knocked out unconscious like 3 fights earlier. Like Pacquiao got knocked out unconscious. And
yeah, because that's how big the guys were. The hype was there for a while.
And then he lost to Bradley, and they still made more money in history. And that just shows you, on another topic, like how gullible people are.
Well, no, but wait, Scully, but in fairness, that brings us back to what we said about Canelo. Pacquiao is a ticket seller. It doesn't matter. They go to see him because they love him. They love the guy. But
I had people telling me that he's going to beat Mayweather even after he got knocked out. They said he's going to beat Mayweather, but
because they love him. They love him.
Yeah, but well, I don't bet with love. I bet with knowledge, and as you do. But with Ali and Frazier, I don't know if you guys have done this. The hotel room that Ali stayed in, because I'm always investigating all this kind of stuff, right? The hotel room that Ali stayed in when he was in New York is at the New Yorker Hotel on 8th Avenue. If you go there, you can go up, and they have a plaque on the door with Ali's picture engraved in it, and and they have a poster of Ali and Frazier on the wall on the floor in the hotel. right outside the room. And so people stay in that room all the time with the plaque on the door.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really did your research.
We digress from the fight. Matthew, can you still hear us good, or is there technical issues with the Wi-Fi?
Well, from our end, everything's fine, Russ. I don't know about you. You might be. What are you having the issues here in Laval this evening?
Okay, good. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure, because sometimes it breaks up. But we digress from the anniversary, and this is the 50th anniversary of, like I said, one of the most important and historic, not just fights, but sporting events in North American history, and I guess with the world, because look what, like John said, they stopped the war for an hour and a half. There was a ceasefire for an hour and a half so that they could watch the fight. But you asked a very important question earlier as to what I consider, the fight between the two. Greatness has to be measured in all forms, right? It's not just the fight being great. It's the fighters. It's who they are. It's who's there. The moment, the pressure of the moment. So nothing could take away from all that was around the fighters. And if you watch both fights, I don't want to say simultaneously, but if you watch one and you watch the other, there is a marked difference in the skill level. And that first fight, Ali dealing with the Joe Frazier that came at him on that night. Every great fighter has had his great night. June 22nd, 1938. That was Lewis. That was the quintessential epitome of the Brown Bomber. That was it. Joe Frazier's night was that night. Like, he was not going to be, and he used both hands. If you watch Manila, he uses one hand to try to block, and he uses the other one to try to punch with. In Madison Square Garden, he used both hands, and he came at you. And that 11th round, when he hit Ali up against the ropes, crushed him. The fact that he stood up, and then to last the 4 more rounds, get dropped in the last round by a left hook that came from Philadelphia. Like that came right from the floor when he hit him.
It came from Mississippi.
Yeah.
Sorry. And the key thing the thing that I always remember for that, and I've always tried to point it out, is Mercanti turns around to send Frazier to the neutral corner, and by time he turns back to start the count, Ali's getting up, right? And to me, that was greater. The thriller in Manila was 2 guys who were trying to hold on to the past, and the one thing they still had that was as strong then as it ever was their balls and their heart, but the skill set didn't match it. And it was a war of attrition, between 2 guys who only had that left. That's what they had to give. But to me, skill-wise, heart-wise, pressure-wise, the event-wise, everything that surrounded that, the pressure going into that, the same way that Lewis had the pressure to walk into that ring against Schmeling when the entire free world needed him to win against the German, even though Schmeling wasn't a Nazi. That's the way it was perceived, right? That's the way it was perceived. The pressure of that is unbelievable. I don't think either of them had that same pressure in Manila.
Right. I would say this. I always bring this up. That 11th round was horrific. Like, Ali got the life beaten out of him, and it wasn't just he got he got caught with just as good of a left hook in the 11th that he did in the 15th, and he buckled. He is lucky he had the right referee that they didn't stop that fight. Joe Frazier easily could have won by knockout in the 11th round. They could have stopped that fight almost at any time. Like, Ali spent the round. There was one point when he literally, you remember this, he fell backwards. He was running backwards into the ropes. If the ropes weren't there, he would have fell into the 5th row. Anybody else on the planet would have tried to give him an 8 count or called it a knockdown or maybe stopped it, and they just let it go. It was fine. So for him to get through that 11th round was nothing short of a miracle. He got caught with that left hook. You thought his head was going to fly off. Like with the 15th round, he got caught with kind of a sweeping hook, and he got hit, and he kept the momentum, sent him back and down. When he got caught in the 11th, he was standing still. There was no leaning back. He got hit with much more force. He went down, something otherworldly kept him up, and he made it to the end of the round. I mean, that was as incredible as anything I've ever seen any fighter ever do.
That's greatness. That's greatness right there, man.
100%.
And I know the heavyweight division is exciting now compared to what it's been in the last few decades, but nothing to the importance of the historical figures you had at that time. And hopefully we get to still reminisce and do some of these going forward. Because I know Russ is a historian. You gentlemen are as well. Any final thoughts this evening before we?
I got final thoughts. We're not passing on this 50 years that easily, because there's a lot to say.
Let's go.
There's been some great quotes in boxing history from fighters, okay? And you would think that of all the things that were said leading up to that fight, all the hype that went into it, and Ali, who pretty much owned Frazier when it came to the talking and to the media and the press conferences and the interviews. You watch the interviews now. Ali could talk, and Frazier was very cordial in his interviews when being interviewed by Dick Cavett or whatever. He was very cordial in what he said. They're two completely different styles. Yet, to me, and it was almost from it's been a source of inspiration for me in my 42 years in the game. It was Joe Frazier who said the best quote for me in that fight. I might have told you before, Scully,
Well, I know what he said.
Yeah, well, I mean, when Ali was going off, I'm not sure when it was, which press conference or how close to the fight, but Ali was, waxing poetic about all the great guys he had beaten. I beat Zora Foley, I beat Sonny Liston, I beat Oscar Bonavena. And Frazier interrupts him and says, "You're not fighting Zora Foley. You're not fighting Oscar Bonavena. You're not fighting Sonny Liston. You're fighting Joe Frazier. You're fighting," and he just kept repeating, "You fighting Joe Frazier." And I thought that was the guy who lost the war of words. To me, won that with a knockout. That was huge.
Let me tell you what, to me, was the good one. He was on a show. You've seen this. This is what I thought you were going to say. They said, they said, was he talking to you? Did Ali ever talk to you during the fight? And yeah, there was one time in one of the rounds, he said, "Don't you know I'm God?" And he'd be punching like, "Don't you know I'm God?" And he goes, "I got into some of them punches." And I said, "Well, God, you're going to get whooped tonight."
Hey, that's like in the Thrill in Manila. Frazier said, Ali said to him, "They said you was washed up, champ." He said, "They lied to you, baby."
Yeah.
Well, the rivalry was certainly intense,
and listen,
right?
I don't think there'll never be another fight with that magnitude. I don't think we're gonna live to see it.
Nah.
You know what, guys?
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say that you can actually go through boxing history and pick out fights that were of importance and great magnitude, not only for what they did in the ring, but for what they did outside of the ring and the impact they had on society. And you could probably count them on one hand, like Jack Johnson fighting Jim Jeffries after the call had gone up for a Great White Hope. That was massive. That was a sign of the times, not just a sporting event. Lewis fighting Schmeling was the second time. This was the world on the brink of war. This was, again, went beyond the sport pages. And then you'd have to fast forward to Ali against Frazier. And probably since then, there hasn't been a fight of that political importance, and likely never will be, or at least we might never see it.
No. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a different world, than it was back then. Like now, like back then, war was war. Like war was front page. In the last 10, 20 years, 5 years, we've been at war and people didn't even know we were at war. They didn't even know there was any wars going on. Like they didn't even know we were involved. And every once in a while you'd read a story like, oh, 6 people were killed in Afghanistan or whatever. They didn't, but people, it wasn't like daily, war would be on the 4th page, but back when Vietnam was going on, everybody was very aware that war was going on. So it was a little bit different. I think the world is there's so, with the internet, and there's so many things going on that people the attention is diverted in a million different directions. Whereas back then you had the biggest newspapers, you had 3 channels, and you had Walter Cronkite telling you what's going on, and the parents watched the news every night. And now it's different. People are watching, Jeopardy at 6 o'clock, and and they're watching 400 different channels in HD. So I think it's going to be hard for anything to reach that magnitude, because people's attention is so diverted, is so like, people are interested in so many different things now. Like I say, there's wars going on, and people don't even know that their country's at war. The United States is at war, and people don't even know what's happening. And it's crazy as it sounds, I know that for a fact. I've talked to people, and they're like, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, it just happened last year. It was a big thing."
So Ice, you're saying the next Jake Paul fight is not going to be as big as Ali Frazier? I was thinking
that freaking guy. Yeah, no.
I'm going to leave on that note.
Yeah, exactly, right? All right then, Russ. You want to make it a final round table, as you like to say? Then in that case.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say is, buddy, I know you thought you were doing this benevolently, but we will be paying you, and we pay with In-N-Out Burger. So next time we're together, In-N-Out Burger is on us.
I want a double with cheese.
Me too.
No tomato. No tomato.
Guys, listen, any final thoughts on the 50th anniversary of Ali Frazier?
Yes. Go ahead. You go ahead first, buddy.
As Ali would say, of all times.
Nah. Hey, you know what? When I started boxing, Ali and Frazier was the first thing I ever heard about. Like that's what got me interested in boxing. Ali and Frazier. It was actually the 3rd fight, but them 2 fighting each other, and I saw the video. It's funny you mentioned it, because the video that you're talking about, where he said, what you said, and I got a mental block. Well, what you said, he said,
you're not fighting.
Right, you're not fighting. Yeah, you're not fighting Oscar Bonavena. You're not fighting Sonny Liston. You're fighting Joe Frazier. And that was the first video that came out in whenever, they did a special on HBO. That was the first video I ever saw that had to do with boxing. So it's funny you mentioned that. So that in hindsight is a big part of the reason those 2 fighting each other is a big part of the reason I ever even got involved with boxing in the first place. So I, in a roundabout way, I owe them a debt of gratitude.
Well said. Well said. Guys, listen, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to do this. I know we could go on and talk for hours about boxing history, but I hope we get a chance to do this again. Buddy, Scully, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good one. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Calling
Hey,
Russ
hold
Anber.
on. One more thing, fellas.
What?
Stay black.
Always.
Hey, later, man.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.